Humans are walking war crimes. That's why they're not allowed in our wars. Professor Luther's declaration hung in the air, stark and undeniable, as his class of alien students sat in stunned silence. The lecture hall, an architectural marvel of the Galactic Coalition, was a vast room carved from sleek metallic walls that shimmered faintly under the sterile glow of interstellar lights. The cold, clinical environment seemed to vibrate with the weight of the professor's words, as if even the room itself recoiled from the notion he had just introduced. Yes, the professor continued, his voice a mix of disdain and reluctant admiration. You may have heard rumors, wild tales of human savagery on the battlefield. But I assure you, the reality is far more disturbing than any story. His tone carried an edge that sent a chill through the diverse array of alien students before him, each representing a species of the Galactic Coalition. In the front row sat the seven-limbed Krika, whose large, multifaceted eyes blinked rapidly in what could only be interpreted as nervousness. Next to her was the hulking Vosk, a being encased in a thick, armored hide that was practically impervious to most forms of weaponry. Even this war-tested species, known for their bravery and resilience, leaned forward with a frown creasing his ridged brow, his curiosity and unease palpable. Behind them sat the serene and emotionless Salak, translucent, jelly-like beings whose forms usually pulsed with calm bioluminescent waves. Now, their glowing forms flickered erratically, betraying an uncharacteristic sense of unease. A young VCAN student with pale blue skin and 4 dexterous arms hesitantly raised one trembling hand. Her voice, although steady, held an undertone of doubt. But Professor Luther, aren't humans physically weaker than many species in the Coalition? How could they possibly be considered so dangerous? The professor turned toward her, his dark, imposing eyes narrowing slightly, a shadow of a smirk tugging at his lips. He said, folding his hands behind his back. You see, it is not their physical strength that makes them dangerous. It is something far more insidious, something entirely unexpected. He let the suspense hang for a moment, his audience leaning forward collectively as they awaited the answer. Walking to the center of the room, Luther activated a holographic display behind him. A shimmering series of images flickered to life, drawing gasps and murmurs from the audience. The first image depicted a lone human soldier, clad in primitive body armor, standing atop a pile of rubble. His face was smeared with dirt and blood, his helmet slightly askew, and yet his eyes burned with an intensity that seemed to transcend the still image. It was a haunting, almost predatory gaze. This, Luther said, gesturing toward the projection, is a human during the siege of Talver. One of the last conflicts they were involved in before the Coalition's ban on their participation in war. Note the lack of advanced weaponry, minimal armor, yet this single man was responsible for the deaths of over 3,000 Scorn warriors in one night. A collective gasp rippled through the classroom, and a rustle of unease swept over the students. The Scorn were a warrior race, legendary for their resilience and ferocity. Their massive, 9-foot-tall forms were equipped with claws capable of rending steel, and their armor was nearly impenetrable. The idea that a single human could bring about such devastation seemed incomprehensible. A reptilian Rakash, whose emerald green scales shimmered with golden undertones, hissed in disbelief. Impossible! What kind of weapon did he use? The professor's expression darkened as he folded his arms across his chest. No weapon, he replied, his voice dropping to a grim undertone. Just his mind. Humans possess an unparalleled capacity for violence. Yes, but it is their disturbingly creative approach to warfare that sets them apart. They don't just fight, they adapt, they improvise, they turn even the most benign objects into instruments of death. He gestured again, and the display shifted to reveal the aftermath of the siege. The battlefield was a horrifying tableau. The bodies of Scorn warriors lay scattered, their massive forms twisted and broken. Pools of dark, viscous blood seeped into the scorched earth. Among the carnage were the remnants of crude, improvised traps, jagged shards of metal tied to ropes, makeshift explosives crafted from scavenged materials, and pits filled with sharpened stakes. It wasn't just his combat prowess that caused the Scorn to fall, Luther explained, his tone cold and analytical. It was his ability to think differently, to see solutions where others saw only obstacles. This is what makes humans so unpredictable, so dangerous. The silence in the hall was heavy, broken only by the faint hum of a holographic display. The professor's words lingered like a storm cloud, and the students wrestled with the implications of what they had just heard. Why not eliminate them entirely? Then, asked a bioluminescent errand student, his markings pulsing faintly with apprehension. Surely, the coalition could. Luther raised a hand to silence him, his gaze solemn. Easier said than done, he murmured. The coalition considered that option once, but they quickly realized the folly of such an endeavor. Humans, when faced with extinction, become even more formidable. They fight like cornered beasts, with a tenacity that borders on madness. The more you push them, the more dangerous they become. He paused to let the gravity of his statement sink in, then delivered the final, chilling conclusion. No, the only solution was to ban them from participating in future conflicts. It was the only way to contain their destructive potential. The remainder of the lecture delved into the historical context and the events that had led to the coalition's decision. But as the students left the hall that day, they carried with them a deeper understanding, a realization that the ban on humans was not an act of exclusion or punishment, but one of self-preservation. Humanity's potential for war was not a tool. It was a weapon unto itself, a force of nature that no other species could hope to understand, let alone control. And as Professor Luther watched them file out, he couldn't shake the lingering unease gnawing at the back of his mind. The galaxy was vast, its future uncertain, and despite all the coalition's precautions, he feared humanity was merely waiting for the day they would be unleashed again. And when that day came, he knew no amount of preparation would ever be enough.